So the day we're recording this is February 2nd, which I believe is Groundhog's Day, correct?
Yeah. I think that was the case. No, was it yesterday?
It is the Feast of the Presentation, you pagans.
Oh, right.
It's that too. It is that.
It is that, first and foremost. However, the seculars would have us believe that a groundhog determines the duration of winter. I was thinking this morning, obviously there's the famous Bill Murray film, Groundhog's Day, but what I want to see is like a Olympus Has Fallen style action thriller where the inner circle people in their top hats and funny suits are working like in a heart-stopping action flick to prevent the assassination of Punxsutawney Phil. I think that would be hilarious.
I believe there was an old Rankin Bass stop motion like Christmas special where Jack Frost was about Jack Frost, and in order to do the thing he needed to do and
wasn't
stick
it
around
narrated by the groundhog from Groundhog's Day? Wasn't it narrated by
maybe
the
it might have been,
because I remember him being
but he did everything he could to make the hedgehog or the groundhog see his shadow.
Yep.
So that he could stick around for 6 more weeks and finish what he had to do.
I have vague memories about that.
I've only seen it in passing once at Grandma's house at a Christmas party. It's that's kind of weird.
I believe groundhogs and woodchucks are basically the same thing. They're in that rodent, large rodent. Class.
Prairie dogs are in there too, right?
Yeah, they're
but considerably smaller rodents.
And marmots. Marmot.
Marmite? That's the...
A marmot is like a woodchuck, but a little bigger. And they're mostly
How much marmite could a marmot...
marmot mutt.
Could a marmite marm?
If a marmot could marmite. If a marmot could marmite.
Excuse me, marm.
We have one... Way back in the day, we went on a family trip to Mount Rushmore, and they had a bunch of marmots running around because they're just native to the area. And so my mom was asked a park ranger. She's like, "So what is that?" And the guy's like, "It's a marmot," but she thought he said varmint. And she's like, "Yeah, what kind of varmint is it?" And he's like, "It's a marmot varmint."
It's a varmint.
Yep.
I suppose that is that make the sense.
Mm-hmm. But today wasn't the presentation traditionally Candlemas?
That is the sort of unofficial name for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In the Anglo world, but yes, it's when you do the candle things.
Mm-hmm.
So we had our bright and early 8 a.m. Wednesday mass.
Nice.
Because we do it early on Wednesdays for ministry purposes, so we can all go out and do things.
Mm-hmm.
But we had the Latin Scola chant this morning, the Lumen ad Revelationem, which is the candle lighting chant, and other things that we did. But yes, that was a fun thing I did this morning.
I suppose the candle mass is a pretty ancient tradition with the Feast of the Presentation, is it not?
Not ancient.
Not ancient, but
but it's old.
In the upwards of 1,000 years old, right?
Probably around that ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look into it to tell you exactly when it started, but
kind of a cool thing that there's still practiced, at least somewhat.
Yeah.
On the topic of faith today, the Catholic schools, there was the North Dakota State Know Your Faith competition, which was hosted by Shanley, the school I work at. So all the Catholic high schools in the state, which there are 5, I believe, total, they got together for a annual Know Your Faith competition. It's been going on for roughly 10 years now. Bismarck won, but it was overall a good time. So I was running around taking pictures of that, but it was quite the event. It was also the high schoolers that were in the stands got pretty into it. So I was I went from that back to my office like, dang, it's actually like super quiet out here. I never noticed that before. My ears are ringing. But good times. Good times today.
Speaking of faith, we're recording this just before our friends, two of our listeners.
Yes.
John and Faith's wedding, and it'll come out afterwards.
We are
so a
heralding
preemptive post-wedding congratulations to them.
Mm-hmm. A pre-post-wedding congratulations.
Congratulations to the Fishers. F's in the chat.
No, that seems like a W to me.
Right,
I mean, F is for Fisher, though.
Faith Fisher.
That
John
would be an FF.
Yeah, FF in the chat. There we go.
Final Fantasy.
Surrender in chat, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So I suppose that means since they will become one, that Faith has the right to see what John sees in our group chat. So,
strictly speaking, probably, but I don't know that she'd want to.
No.
Yeah, it's.
I don't think she's going to exercise that.
Past experience has shown it is not a female-friendly chat, not by design, just by circumstance.
Just by what goes on.
It's not friendly to the temperaments of the females we would invite.
Yeah. So
if
there's
Emma
that.
can't handle it, nobody can.
Right,
Yeah.
and Emma can handle a lot. I should know.
She doesn't have like an unlimited boy nonsense.
She has
a fairly high level that has gradually grown during the time that she's known us.
And like this idea of like a personal dignity and being the need to be respected, crap like that. Nah.
Lol.
No, it's all good. So let's see. What? How was your retreat last week, Riley?
Oh, my retreat was very prayerful and reflective for sure. We went to West Virginia.
Oh wow, yeah, because you're in that neck of the woods.
Yeah. West Virginia is like the border's like 4 hours away from where we are.
Mm.
The particular retreat center we went to was in Charleston, which was about 4:45. We stopped in Moorhead along the way.
Funny enough.
Moorhead, Kentucky.
Was anybody like, "Hey, Riley, aren't you from here?" It's like wrong Moorhead.
I've had that happen while I've been here. It's like I'm from Moorhead, and people from Kentucky are like, "Moorhead, Kentucky?" I'm like, "No."
The real.
I was
Moorhead.
wearing my
More
Moorhead
Moorheads
Spuds.
are better than one.
I was wearing my Moorhead Spuds basketball shirt one day, and someone's like, "Are you from Moorhead, Kentucky?" And I'm like, "Can you read this? It says Moor."
So it's like
not
Moorhead.
M-O-R-E head. Because the Kentucky is M-O-R-E, and the Minnesota is M-O-O-R.
Yeah. So interesting. Because I know there's
the shirt.
There's multiple Fargos, I believe, around.
Yeah, I think there's a Fargo, Georgia.
There's a Duluth, Georgia. There's just like all these like copycat.
Maybe the same people that made trains up here made trains down there.
That's probably true. Somebody had to do it after they burnt Atlanta to the ground, but we're not going to go into that.
It was probably before they started making them trains.
Actually, that was like one of the
particular, like the Great Northern Line was not until like the 1880s, wasn't it?
Right, yeah. But I mean, like when Sherman did his march to the sea, what little
sure, there were railroads at the time.
Yep. But yeah, North Dakota was not very populous. Oh, did I talk about the Disney film Iron Will on the chat at all?
No, you haven't.
Okay, all right, not in the chat. I mean on the podcast. Same thing. Okay.
Not quite.
So a couple weeks ago, I was home with my parents and my brother and his wife and their little baby, and we decided to sit down and watch a movie after my brother and company went home on Saturday night. So my dad throws out on Disney Plus and is like, "Oh, look at this movie. Okay, Iron Will." So it's like made in the 90s or whatever, like one of those like cheap live action movies they made or whatever. But it's about this guy who goes in a dog sled race. He's from South Dakota, which apparently looks strangely like northern Minnesota, and does a sled. This is what the podcast is about, by the way.
I don't think we'll do one on that.
He does a dog sled race from Winnipeg, Canada, which looks suspiciously like downtown Duluth, to St. Paul, Minnesota, which looks like, I don't know, like somebody's backyard. So, I don't know what it is about Hollywood and thinking that the Canadian border in this neck of the woods just has mountains everywhere, because there's this whole sequence where they're going through these dangerous, treacherous mountains. I'm like, you say you're going to Pembina? There's nothing in Pembina. There's nothing there.
But dramatic tension.
Yeah.
But rising action.
And
But something to look at.
Yeah, and apparently, like, they go east into part of North Dakota, which doesn't make any sense. Like with the map they had.
Passed our geography class.
So my dad and I were just like going back and forth about all these places that they just got completely wrong. But
what
apparently,
alternate timeline are you from?
Yeah. It's like vaguely based off of a true story. But instead of like the good white kid in the movie, it was actually two Native American men. So whoopsie.
Whoopsie. Did Hollywood do a whitewash? Oh, no.
Oh, no, in the 90s. So there was that. But also, there was it was apparently, I looked it up because this was, I was becoming way more obsessed with this than I needed to be. And because that's about how interesting the movie was. Apparently they filmed it like in Duluth and Cloquet, which is where a friend of the pod, Ben, lives, to the point where there's a railroad bridge. I'm like, wait a minute. I've seen that one before. How stupid is it that I can recognize a railroad bridge? But it's like, I'm pretty sure they like filmed it not too far from where he lives. So a lot of the stuff in the backwoods, which is kind of funny, on things that are totally not cross-country ski trails. Why do you ask? But yeah, stupid story, but I just thought I'd talk about how ridiculous it is. Hollywood thinks that there's just the Rocky Mountains could follow the Canadian border all the way from Washington to New York.
I mean, we've already discussed Logan, that apparently has a climax in North Dakota, even though it's totally there.
The coordinates, it's just like a bean field or something like that. It's like no dramatic cliffs or anything like that. But I found that humorous. That's one of the things I just obsessed about for a while.
I imagine there are other places of the world where they're like, every time I see a Hollywood movie set in my state, it's all wrong.
Or if it's a Mexico or India or something, they'll just throw a bunch of yellow over the film.
Gotta have a sepia filter, man.
Yeah, the sepia
Mexico.
filter. Yeah, and then there was a trend online like maybe a month or so ago where people are like, yeah, this is what it actually looks like in Mexico, just taking pictures with their phones. Like, yeah, this looks nothing like the whatever film it was.
Whatever Bourne movie.
It's like
when
the
he goes
sky
there or
looks
something.
blue here to me. So, I mean, obviously stylized, but anyway. Enough
Speaking of obsessing about things,
we're the Palladian Papists. I'm
Papists.
James.
I am Nathan.
and I'm Riley.
It's Gregarious Games today?
No, I'm pulling a pivot on what I had suggested talking about. We're
Okay.
doing a philosophical today
All right.
Alrighty then.
on the film A Silent Voice.
In a world where one man will decide whether to pull a lever and kill one man, or not pull a lever and allow 5 people to die, find out in Philosophical.
So yes, philosophical is where we get philosophical about films. Tell us about A Silent Voice, Riley. And this is a podcast, so say it out loud, please.
Yes, so I will talk about the movie A Silent Voice using
An audible
voice.
Audibly
Ah,
speaking.
might-
Audibly
one
speaking about a
expect of
silent voice.
of an audio-only podcast. So this movie is set in modern-day 2017 Japan.
All right.
It is a anime film.
Okay.
So it begins by jumping into the life of Shoya Ishida. And this boy, he's depressed. He's a sad boy. And
Sounds like modern day 2017 Japan to me.
yes, certainly. Except this isn't really a systemic thing. This is kind of his own fault, which we will discover later. So we see several clues in the early shots of the movie that Shoya intends to take his own life. We see a torn calendar that ends at April 15th, or whatever the date is, I forget. but there is
American Tax Day.
Yes, exactly.
That's what it's about.
That's gotta be it.
Even in Japan, people fear it.
He's saving up a bunch of money to pay his mom back for something that we also don't know about yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes out to the bridge, and he's standing there, and he's trying to get himself to do it, but he just can't. He can't bring himself to fall off. So he gets down and goes back home. Now we flash back to the past, to elementary-ish school, where Shoya was a pretty relentless bully. So he's just hanging out with his friends, having a good time in middle school, when a new girl, Shoko, transfers into his school. Now, Shoko is deaf, and so, hence the silent voice thing.
Talking with her hands.
That fact distinguishes her from other members of the class, and they kind of pretty quickly start to alienate her. And so a lot of the kids bully her lightly, but Shoya is really, really intent and really aggressive with how he treats her. Mm-hmm. So he'll steal her notebook, which is like the only means she has of communicating with anyone, and rips her hearing aids out of her ears to cause her to bleed and stuff like that, because they're pretty tightly secured. And so over the course of time, his friends start to get disgusted with him and kind of separate themselves from him. And, you know, even though they were complicit
in
earlier
previous
on,
bullying,
He just reached a point where even they were uncomfortable
they
with
just are appalled by what's going on at this point, and they dissociate from him, and, you know, Shoko's transferred schools and all that kind of stuff. So Shoko's mom has to replace all these hearing aids, which are, of course, very expensive. And so she gets fed up with this and goes to the school and says, "We've got to do something about this. My daughter is having a terrible time. We've got to hold whoever's doing this responsible." Mm-hmm. And so basically all the kids sell out Shoya because, I mean, in fairness, he was kind of the ringleader. So he is pretty severely punished, and his mom pays back all of the money that was spent on the hearing aids. So that's what Shoya's debt comes in from. And so back to the present, Shoya has kind of come to the point where he's decided to make amends, to try to reconcile and make things right for his prior behavior. He still has the notebook that he stole from Shoya back then. Shoko, rather. So he goes to her new school to try to meet up with her. When he goes to the classroom, he is met by another kid who's in there who says, "Nope, no, but she's not here." He looks in the door and she's sitting in the class there, but the kid's like, "Nope, not here."
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, "Okay."
Because, probably knows about him.
I'm sure. So he's not deterred. He routinely comes back and continues to ask. But one day he bumps into her in the hallway, and she's like all surprised, and she can't speak very well, so she doesn't say anything. But he shows that he's learned some sign language, and kind of tells her that he kind of he asks if they can be friends, and she seems amenable to that. And so Shoya's mom finds out about his suicide attempt because of the money he pays her back and the ripped calendar and things. And so she chews him out and threatens to burn the money if he ever tries it again. He's like, "You don't have to worry about it. I'm trying to make things right here." And so he goes back to his own school, where we see a young man who's very isolated from everyone around him. Everyone in his school is pictured with these like paper X's taped over their faces when we're looking at things from his point of view. So like nobody has a face. They're just a blue X over a vaguely human-shaped face, head thing. And so he pushes everyone away kind of habitually at this point in his life. But one day he's walking out to his bike to go home, and he sees another kid getting accosted by another kid who wants to take his bike, and he says, "Hey, cut it out. You can just use my bike." So this guy can go on his way. And the bully's like, "Okay, sounds good to me," and takes his bike and rides off. And the kid he protected is grateful, and Nagatsuka becomes kind of his first friend at his school that he's really started to open up to, and they start to develop a nice friendship and introduce him to more people, and he starts to integrate himself a little bit. And so Shoya decides to go and meet Shoko again. And their friendship is really starting to develop too. She likes to feed the birds on this one little park bridge. So he goes out there and brings bread for them to feed the ducks with. Shoko drops one of her notebooks in the river, and they both jump in to retrieve it. So they're all wet, and Shoya gets suspended for jumping into rivers, because that's apparently something you can't do. But
all right,
it was one of this little kid who was protecting Shoko is like a photographer, so they've got a camera and took a picture of it and posted it online, and that went viral and all that stuff. So, but the kid is like, "Yeah, I'm sorry for doing that. That was probably not very smart. So you wanna come over to my house and have dinner or something?" He's like, "Sure, I guess." And so they're going along, and all of a sudden, the kid just kind of says, "All right, I'm going, bye." And he's like, "What? I walked you all this way home, and you're just going to ditch me here?" He's like, "Okay, whatever." What we soon find out is that the kid is actually Shoko's younger sister, Yuzuru.
Oh.
And so inviting over the guy who made Shoko's life miserable probably wouldn't go over well with her mom. So that's kind of why Yuzuru ditched Shoya while they were walking home. So they start to develop a friendship too. This kind of Yuzuru sees a different side of him when he's going to the park to pick up his niece, and Yuzuru happens to be there. This kind of sees a different side of him caring for his niece than he'd ever seen before, or kind of imagined this person to be. So she kind of has a different perspective about him through that. Meanwhile, Shoko is starting to develop feelings for Shoya. Because, he's starting to pay attention to her, and they're spending a lot of time together. And despite everything that's happened, she kind of notices that he's making a genuine turnaround, and is kind of very clearly attracted to that. And so that's happening in the background. So they decide to go and meet some more old friends and try to reconnect and reconcile and things. So they start with one of Shoko's old friends, who was one of the only people that was nice to her back then, who also had to transfer schools because association with Shoko meant more bullying. And they meet up with her, and that's a good time, and they have a great conversation. And they also run into Naoka, which was one of the popular girls. And, she had a thing for Shoya, and kind of still does. So she tries to drive a wedge into things. 'Cause she sees the two of them hanging out, and goes up to Shoko and bullies her. And Shoya's like, "You gotta stop. That's not okay." And said, "Let's go." So Naoka's kind of put off and doesn't understand this new guy that she thought she knew. But she's not deterred, so she keeps showing up, and Shoya keeps pushing her away. So Shoko's gotten to the point that she's ready to confess her feelings, but she tries to do so verbally. I mean, she can speak a little bit, but it's not very clear or distinct. So she tries to say it out loud, but Shoya can't understand her. And so he just kind of laughs it off and makes, light conversation because he thinks she's trying to say something totally different, which causes her to get really frustrated and run off. And so he's confused about that because he thought it was just some fun, joking comment, but he's kind of like, okay, clearly there's something I've missed here. So we're gonna try to figure out.
Let's walk that back a little bit and figure out what happened.
But at this point, Shoko is starting to avoid him because she's frustrated about her inability to express herself to him and she just wants to be normal. She wants to be able to talk and, be something for Shoya that he would want or that she thinks he would want. But the friends from back in the day are all starting to get together again and make amends. So they're going to an amusement park to hang out. And everything is going swimmingly, and Shoya is starting to really develop a sense of community with his friends and start to, have some hope and joy in life again. Mm-hmm. And then Naoka decides to show up and make things troublesome. Mm-hmm. And so she takes Shoko onto the Ferris wheel and tells Shoko that she hates her. I hate your stinking guts. And that she thinks that she's changing Shoya into somebody that he's not and all that jazz. Shoko says that she doesn't hate Naoka, but she really hates herself because she can't be what she wants to be. And Yuzuru captures this whole conversation on video because he's in the next car over. She's in the next car over, right?
Good grief.
So she shows that to Shoya, and they resolve together to help Shoko like herself again. So they have a friend meet up, and the gang's having a conversation about Shoya's past, and all of the rotten things that he's done, but they can see that he's trying to make things right. So they're willing to forgive him until Naoka doesn't let them. And she tells them to stop, blaming him and stop making everything about him. And it causes the groups to kind of turn against each other, at which point Shoya gets overwhelmed and starts to just call out everything about each of them that is hypocritical or wrong and push everybody away because he's just so overwhelmed. And obviously that doesn't help his case to try to restore his friendships by actively unrestoring his friendships. And so they all start to think that he hasn't really changed, and everybody leaves and he's alone. Eventually he gets to the point that he wants to try to start over. He realized that doing that wasn't the most helpful thing, and he's got to stop using anger and isolation as defense mechanisms for not dealing with hard problems. So he goes and he meets with Shoko again and tries to act overly cheery. He's just really, flowery and buzzing around, but she sees through it, and she's just like, man, you're struggling just as much as I am, aren't you? And he's like, yeah. So they go out to the fireworks together for the new year or what have you. And while they're there, Shoko says that she forgot something at home and needs to go get it. Yuzuru forgot her camera, so she asks Shoya to go and get it for her. So he follows. And when he gets there, he finds Shoko standing on top of the balcony, leaning over the edge, getting ready to fall. And he rushes in and, grabs her by the ankle as she's falling and keeps her from dropping. And in the scuffle to pull her back up, he himself ends up falling. So he crashes down into the ground, and it cuts to black. A while later, we find out that he's in a coma. So at least he's not dead.
Mm-hmm.
But he's comatose, and people are distraught. Shoko's mom is kind of come around and started to see that this guy is genuinely changed, to the point that he's willing to put his own life on the line to save her daughter, and is really grateful for that. But Naoka, of course, blames Shoko for everything that's happened, and she starts beating up Shoko, at which point her mom jumps in and starts beating up a teenager. And Shoya's mom jumps in and says, "You guys, stop. Shoya wouldn't want this. Why are you fighting? This is just, you guys have to make amends." And they're all like, "Yeah, you're right." So, a short while later, Shoko has a dream and goes out into the middle of the night to the bridge where they would always go to feed the ducks. And Shoya wakes up from his coma that night and goes to that spot right then as well. And they meet there. And Shoko apologizes for not loving herself enough, for not believing in herself enough. And Shoya apologizes outright for everything he did, because he'd never really done that.
Mm-hmm.
He tried to do things to make it better, but he'd never come out and said all of the things he had done were wrong. And, they have a good reunion moment over that. And he thanks Naoka for staying with him and caring about him through this whole process. And so he goes back to school and is starting to see life differently. And this great shot at the end where they're at the school festival all together, and he walks into his classroom, and all of the X marks fall off of everybody's faces, and then the end plays.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
There you go. That's the thing.
So, thoughts and impressions while I wet my throat.
So this is a feature film, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Movie.
Gotcha.
It's I think hour 48. So
Okay.
Okay.
So that sort of motif of the people in school with X's on their faces, that's just through the whole movie?
Yep, that's present in basically everybody who isn't someone he's directly friends with, which is nobody right at the start.
Right.
Gotcha. So which goes to show he doesn't really see them as real people, and he's kind of in his own world.
Which would have made it easier to bully them if he dissociates from everything.
Initially, when he's in elementary school,
Oh, sure.
everyone's normal. It's once he's in high school and trying to isolate everybody.
I think...
Because the thing is that he has trouble looking people in the eyes.
Sure.
He won't do that. And that's why that's kind of a symbol of his not looking people in the eyes.
Their faces. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cool illustration, sort of that'd be a motif, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. There's some thematic parallel things that happen where it starts where he's on the edge of a bridge deciding whether or not to jump in. About halfway through, when his relationship with Naoko?
No.
Shoko.
No, Shoko.
Yep.
When his relationship with Shoko really starts, they fall off of a bridge. And when his
Together.
relationship with Shoko comes to a climax, he is saving her from jumping off of a
balcony.
But it's
It's all into a river. Her balcony overlooks a river.
Right.
And the bridge overlooks a river. So there's always...
So there's that motif of falling into water that I thought was interesting, how it punctuated the change in the character and the growth in their relationship. That was kind of a neat little through line theme.
Mm-hmm. And it's the whole symbol of a bridge is a great thing, because it's a place that unites the two
two halves, the two sides.
Yes.
He and his entire life he's been burning bridges with everybody in his life up until at high school he's burned every bridge there is.
Yep.
But now it's about building bridges back up.
The river would symbolize, because obviously bridges.
The water under the bridge, as it were.
Yeah.
Indeed.
But also the
water
an obstacle that must be overcome in order to do that.
It's the thing that separates the people.
So in his case, it's his sort of, his need to control and dominate other people to an extent, I suppose. But learning to see people as people. And then for Shoko, in her case, it's her deafness that's the obstacle for her.
Mm-hmm.
There's that failure to be able to communicate with people in the way she would like to.
Mm-hmm.
So she's got this barrier preventing her from crossing several bridges, or several rivers, I should say.
So I suppose they both have communication barriers because he's unable to look people in the eye. That's eye contact is a major part of reading people and communicating with them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both kind of debilitating in terms of their effect on one's ability to form and maintain relationships. So that's kind of an interesting thing there. Yeah, pretty cool.
It's a fairly simple and straightforward story, but there is a lot of depth to some of these themes and the way they're presented.
Sounds like kind of a meditative piece, almost relatively speaking, obviously.
Relatively speaking, yeah. There's not a whole lot of
in concept.
It's an interpersonal drama.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. And this movie lost out at the Academy Awards to Boss Baby
oh my god!
for Best Animated Film.
Oh my gosh!
Lovely.
Wow. I do remember hearing some complaints that there was another animated that there are plenty of animated movies
that deserved to win Best Animated Film of the Year
over
and lost to
Boss Baby.
Hollywood Shovelware.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole conversation you could go into about how
watch
Academy Awards are
Mother's Basement's video on why Hollywood doesn't get animation.
Yeah.
The Academy Awards in general are kind of a joke at this point. Kind of always have been.
That's kind of his point. Is Hollywood is just a bunch of self-referential.
It's a circle of patting each other on the back.
Well, it's all about specifically for people who get to vote on Academy Award-winning movies. It's basically which studio is able to schmooze them more. Essentially, is what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Or make them feel good about themselves as
because we
Hollywood
picked it because of diversity and all the stuff. It's this one starred a black actor. Let's nominate it. It's come on, guys.
Yep. The lady does what with the fish? Heck yeah. So anyway,
sidetrack. More back to the story.
So this game was it nominated?
Game.
Sorry,
it was originally
film.
It was nominated.
It was nominated. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's clearly worthy of such accolades. So it's a lot to. I don't know.
It's the winner in my heart.
Okay.
That's for sure.
See, the real Academy Award winners were the friends we made along the
way. This movie is about making friends along the way.
More or less.
Yeah, quite literally. Making friends that you lost along the way.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, what is the name of the girl who's just a mean girl? What's her name again?
Nauka.
What's her deal? Because,
she has latent feelings for Shoya that she is also unwilling to express, or perhaps unable to express.
And come to terms with.
She's never explicitly stated as that, but it seems pretty clear the way she's framed.
And kind of unable to come to terms with the fact that desire is never going to be fulfilled. And so it needs to lash out at Shoko for it, right? That's kind of her.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also
back in elementary school, she was the popular kid.
Mm-hmm.
She was the pretty popular girl that everybody liked. And now she's just kind of blends in with the crowd and doesn't stand out for any particular reason.
Mm-hmm.
Because she kind of has she has no personality other than being vindictive, which nobody wants to be around.
Yep.
But
it
at
turns
the same
out
time,
being a bully
genuinely
and a jerk loses friends.
Who would have thought?
She's kind of like the if Shoya hadn't decided
changed.
to turn around. She's kind of the counterpoint in that way.
Sure.
She represents what Shoya was, whereas Shoko represents what he's trying to be, or be more like. Yeah.
Makes sense.
So you got these two people pulling at him from opposite ends.
It's sort of the angel and devil on his shoulder, as it were.
No, he's
In a
got a
manner
point.
We've been through this. It's a harp.
If only she had thought that.
Yeah. I guess any other cool things you'd like to discuss in the Silent Voice?
Cool stuff.
I don't know if there's any other cool stuff that doesn't belong properly to one of the transcendental categories.
All right.
So-
Well, that being the case, let's get right on into it. Truth. What are some truths we can find in A Silent Voice?
Everybody can turn around.
Yeah.
No matter how far you've gone, no matter what things you've done in your life, you can always try to make amends.
Not
It
everyone
will be
will accept
difficult.
it at first. It'll be hard. And you've got to work at it. And you've got to actually own up to and apologize for the things you've done. On both an interpersonal level and also in Catholic case, I don't know how to use confession in an adjective. Anyway, on that level.
Reconciliation level.
On reconciliation level. Yes.
The other thing, too, I mean, obviously, like, making the decision not to take his own life, on, like, the literal sense, but also, like, that sort of symbolizes his need to turn around from things that were destroying his life by his other actions, too. And the need to... You have to go through a lot of work to overcome those issues that led you to that place in the first place, whether literally or, destroying your life, metaphorically speaking. So that's kind of I do kind of appreciate that symbolism too. Because your actions can completely ruin your life. Even if you are alive, you can basically kind of kill off whatever like life you have by making poor choices that alienate others from you.
And the other thing is the first time that he attempted to fall into the river, it was an entirely, selfish.
Yeah.
Because
Because he felt sorry for himself, basically.
The last time at the end of the movie, it was entirely self-sacrificial how he ended up falling into the coma, fortunately.
It was done out of love.
Instead of out of self-loathing.
Yeah.
Also, you must be willing to communicate.
Yeah.
Communication
is another one of the central themes here. Is like,
everyone
has
failure
impediments,
to communicate.
right? Everyone has barriers to communication, and
Be it
some of them
personal,
are
physical,
they're more apparent than others.
Yeah.
Obviously, Shoko's is pretty obvious. She is deaf and can't hear, and consequently has difficulty speaking, so has to find alternative ways. And one of the primary things that sets her back is her unwillingness to kind of relinquish her hold on normalcy. She
has this
feels
ideal
like
for herself she wants to live up to, but physically cannot.
kind of has an external perfectionism where she wants to live up to what her perceived expectations from others are.
Yeah.
Whether or not those expectations are actually what people want. And all of the major characters
And
in this movie have their respective communication impediment.
And honestly, our protagonist may be in part responsible for her feeling called out for being different and not normal.
And
He
very
contributed to
certainly
her
is.
poor self-image and highlighting her physical defect.
And by the same token, he's showing willingness to turn around, like learning some sign language and things like that, try to make amends for it. But ultimately, her frustration that she's not able to tell him how she feels is because like she's still clinging to that idea that she can try to be normal. So she tries to speak normally, and it just isn't working. Mm-hmm. Any other truths we can bring out of the movie?
I had one other thing, but it's escaping me.
Gotcha.
We might roll over it in one of the next sections.
We might.
Goodness. What is good in a silent voice?
Well,
or is it
frankly,
the
not
silent?
a lot until the end. Like,
Sure.
Right. There is that initial...
everyone's kind of
terrible.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point, really. There is that initial and very intentional decision to try and make amends, even if it may be misguided or short-sighted at first.
But becomes genuine over time.
Mm-hmm. And, once we get to the point where relationships have been reforged and, Shoya is starting to really feel at home again, like he's returned to a place of community and communion. And there's the moment where they're all at the amusement park and the world kind of freezes and he looks at it and goes, is this what this is all about? Is this the thing I've been searching for this whole time?
Is happiness a thing? Not.
Is that something I can have?
Is happiness the friends I made along the way?
It's like, wait, I don't have to get some sense of superiority and satisfaction for picking on people. I can make lasting, meaningful bonds with humans by being nice to them and being, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good moment when he realizes the real value of the friends he has come to find.
Well, because oftentimes people can lash out at things that secretly are ultimately has its root in an unmet, genuine desire in their heart, right?
Right.
So in his case, it's that desire for communion and community and connection that he's lashing out because he can't get, and so he is basically actively alienating and bullying people.
Yeah, certainly in kind of the middle act of the movie, that's the case.
Sure.
It's not real clear in the beginning, what
his starting
prompted him
point
to
is.
be like that in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't see his father at any point, so that could potentially be something. But that's kind of speculation.
An inference you could make, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
That would seem to fit
He
with the
doesn't
narrative.
have any male role models in his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can certainly be a factor.
Yeah. And by the end of it, the amends that are made by all parties are good. And
and they're genuine.
And there's everyone in this scenario has been deeply wounded by things that have gone on. And by the end of it, everyone realizes that we can't go on like this.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We have to forgive.
Because that's the only way to
have
bring
to
true
reconcile.
healing.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we'll be in this vicious cycle for the rest of our lives.
Which certainly does happen for people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
See it all the time.
See Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
We'll probably do that.
Which
in a
we'll
couple
get to
weeks.
someday.
Yeah, we will get
when
to
they
that.
finish it.
We're gonna wait all the way until they finish.
Well, yeah,
season
it's
5?
so close to being done.
So
like,
close
is
it
it?
isn't a year away.
Well,
Is it, though?
I would
There
hope.
could very well be a lot more.
Yeah.
I'd
depends
say
on
do it
where they
now
go
that
with
we've
it.
caught up, and then do a follow up later. Anyway,
Yep.
this
Anyway.
is conversation for outside the podcast and planning.
Yep.
Beauty?
Anything else in the goodness department?
I think we're good on goodness.
All right,
Yeah.
beauty. Now, Nathan and I haven't seen it, but what is beautiful about the film, Riley?
Oh, everything.
We're gonna have to
It's
see
it's very ordinary in its
Sure.
aesthetic.
Sure.
Because it's trying to highlight the groundedness of its subject matter. And so it's not extraordinary, it's not highly colorful, but it is colorful, but it's not muted either.
It's a more simple, grounded sort of.
It's kind of a canvas on which the relationships can occur.
Sure.
Sure.
So it tries to be as normal and expectation meeting as it possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And it does a very good job of doing that. The background truly is the background for the foreground story. The soundtrack is really wonderful. They mix in a lot of, like, popular songs. It's not just kind of orchestral, feely background music.
Sure.
And they mix in music that is potent and relevant to the situation, especially kind of the more upbeat, cheerful moments.
Oh, sure.
Using, so its use of music is really strong, just to reinforce the moods and the situations that are happening.
Sure.
Nice.
As animation goes, it's also quite standard. That's not the focus of it.
The focus is the story and the character work, and that's just
Right.
how they're choosing to express it.
Mm-hmm.
So
The story and the character work itself sounds like it's
pretty
really nice.
pretty
really
solid,
well
yeah.
written.
Unity, what brings it all together?
I would say that reconciliation is what brings it all together. Perhaps the theme in the title, a silent voice, is kind of the guiding principle,
Sure.
the through line that connects everything.
Because that you could call it like conscience, as well as like,
As well as the communication piece.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Communication is the cornerstone of
Human
relationships.
to one another.
And it's about, and particularly when you need to be forgiven for something,
Mhm.
or ask forgiveness, I should say.
That can only come through communication.
Exactly.
Like-
you can only ask for forgiveness. That is
Mhm.
generally the way you're going to get it,
Yeah.
if you get it at all.
Yeah. So, anything else to add?
Nope.
Alrighty then. Well, thanks for listening to the Palladium Papists. You can listen to us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, and leave a rating to let us know what you think of the pod. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Papists, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, or suggestions for future episodes, email us at palladiumpapists@gmail.com. And you will catch us in our post-wedding high next week. Not our own, obviously, but
No,
yeah,
but we're
Post-celebration.
The joy of witnessing a wonderful marriage.
yes, the
Sacramental
celebratory
I will
celebration.
be in-person present for that. So
Yeah.
should be a good time.
Yeah.
So we'll catch you guys next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
See ya.